Well, it looks like Captain America Brave New World finally fell from the sky. Or as some people would say, so, Brave New World tanked in its second week, earning just $28.3 million domestically and $35.3 million internationally. That's a 68% drop. That ain't good. So, are you guys happy now? Will you be able to put head to pillow and sleep tonight? I mean, some of y'all were crying real tears because the movie had a solid opening. Now that it looks like it's gonna go the way of Quantumania, so it's gonna flop. You feel better now? That's a rhetorical question. Of course they do. When they heard the news, they were like,
Yes! Yes! Oh, yeah! Can you feel that, buddy? Huh? Huh? Huh?
honestly, this is probably the happiest they've been since the last Snow White update. Now, before we look at the numbers, let me just get this out the way, because I know somebody's gonna say it. No, I'm not pulling down my first video, because the movie actually did do well its opening weekend. And no, I'm not going to admit I was wrong, because I said in both videos that it was possible the movie could still flop.
I'm sure you already knew that. That's what turns me on about you. Your attention to detail.
As for the numbers, from The Hollywood Reporter, quote, last weekend, Brave New World came in ahead of expectations when opening to $100 million over the long Valentine's Day/President's Day weekend in North America, including $88.4 million for the 3 days. Globally, it started off at $192.4 million after launching to $92.4 million internationally. This weekend, the superhero pick earned another $35.3 million overseas for a global tally of $289.4 million. In another article, Variety compared Brave New World to previous MCU outings. Quote, it's not uncommon for comic book tentpoles on the scale of Captain America to significantly slide in subsequent weekends. Yet this film, saddled with negative reviews and poor word of mouth, fell on the steeper side with a drop closer to 2023's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, down 70% after a $106 million debut, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, down 47% after a $118 million debut. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Thor Love and Thunder also saw similar declines of 67% in their respective sophomore outings. However, those 2022 films had much bigger debuts. Guardians 3 endured at the box office, while Ant-Man 3 became one of the few Marvel movies that failed to cross the $500 million mark globally and didn't break even in its theatrical run. In short, the whole narrative that this falloff is a new thing for MCU films just doesn't hold up. A steep 60 to 70% drop-off in the second week has become common for most of the Phase 4 and 5 films, including those that did very well at the box office. It's still not good, but it is the current trend. Now, both articles claim that it's possible for Brave New World to recover, but that isn't the trend with MCU movies. If a movie drops significantly in the second week, it usually doesn't pick up steam again in the following weeks. It just keeps dropping, meaning Brave New World probably won't hit $500 million. Like Variety mentioned, the negative reviews and poor word of mouth isn't helping the movie. Mainstream critics didn't like the movie, and the general audience response is that the movie is at best aggressively mid. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's also not that great. The anti-woke crowd were going to hate the movie regardless, since they have a hate motive for anything MCU these days, so their commentary is basically useless. That said, most of the Phase 4 and 5 films and shows have been aggressively mid. The one film everyone seems to like is Spider-Man No Way Home. The rest got mixed to negative reactions, and like the Variety article mentions, this has become the new normal for MCU films. Whereas before they could do no wrong, now the audience isn't with it anymore, and that goes to a broader problem with the MCU, audience burnout. After Avengers Endgame came out in 2019, Disney and Marvel should have given the MCU a break. What they achieved was incredible. 10 years of films and TV shows building up to one of the biggest films ever made. Once you nail that, you don't jump back in to try to do it again. You give the audience a chance to catch their breath, a chance to process what happened, a chance to look back on it fondly, and a chance to wonder what will happen next. In a perfect world, Disney and Marvel would have waited 5 years and started the next phase with Spider-Man Far From Home, matching the time gap between the snap and it getting undone in the movie. That would have given them enough time to get people hyped for more MCU. Instead, They ended Phase 3 with Far From Home and then waited a whole calendar year, to jump right back into it, and that year-long delay was probably due to the pandemic more than anything else. And what did they do right out of the gate? Multiverse stuff. Sure, they'd already dabbled with it in previous films, but they dove in head first with Phase 4, and it was a mess. All the planning they'd done with the previous films and shows never gelled with the new stuff. Add to this the brilliant idea to adapt the failed all-new, all-different story arcs from the comics. Yeah, those books didn't sell well and are largely disliked by comic book fans. Let's make movies out of them. Why in the fuck would you do that? Nobody liked those stories, why would you adapt them? But I will give them credit. They had a better explanation for Falcon taking on Cap's name than the comics, but it still wasn't going to get over. The same with Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel. They tried the same tactics from the comics, literally declaring that these are your new favorite characters.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
And the proof is that when the Marvels came out, it crashed and burned before the first ticket even sold. None of those characters got over, which is why they didn't do well in the box office. That goes back to what Marvel and Disney achieved. They took second-tier characters Marvel hadn't sold the rights to and made them A-list household names. You can't just replace them. It takes time to build interest in new characters, especially when the old ones are so beloved. But even the remaining characters that people liked, Loki, Doctor Strange, Thor, suffered in the last two phases because none of it clicked with the audience. I suspect part of it is that people are tired of the MCU formula. I think part of it is that the whole multiverse thing isn't the draw Marvel and Disney thought it would be. I think part of it is that people are waiting for the X-Men to show up. But I think the main problem is that they couldn't recapture the magic of building up to this big event. That's what made the whole MCU thing kind of work. Everyone waiting to see all these characters on screen together. Well, they've already done it, and they've done it enough that the audience is expecting it. When they don't see anything new that wows them, they'll probably get bored. I think that's what's happening to the MCU. The biggest draw right now would be the X-Men, which they kind of teased with Doctor Strange too. What else could they possibly do to top bringing in the X-Men? They are still aiming for Secret Wars, but I don't think that's going to bring it out of people. They really haven't set it up all that well. Honestly, the only thing that comes to mind that would make people lose it like they did with Endgame is a crossover with DC Comics, and that's not going to happen. I give Marvel credit for trying to pivot away from the one-liners and humor to something more serious in Brave New World, but I don't think adapting the failed comic book story arc is the best way to go. The same goes for pigeonholing the Falcon into an Incredible Hulk film, which hasn't had a sequel in almost 20 years. That seems like that's probably not going to work to your benefit. What they're doing with the Fantastic Four, setting them in their own universe, might actually be the best decision. Then they could have their crossover with the main MCU and other timelines. It also allows them to bring in characters like Miles Morales without scrubbing Peter from the main MCU, which will eventually happen. Along the same line, it gives them room to potentially bring in new actors for Captain America, Iron Man, and the other Avengers. I doubt they're going to do anything like that. They really seem set on doing this multiverse thing, and while it worked in Deadpool and Wolverine, I think people will get tired of it real quick if Marvel just keeps hopping universes. The real test is people's reaction to Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. If people accept that, Marvel might be able to make this work. If not, they're going to have more movies perform like Brave New World, open with a strong takeoff, and then just faceplant right out of the sky. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.